So I think what a lot of marketing hype and influencers would have you believe is that nobody ever killed a deer before there was Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or computers. If you don't have a giant fat turn dial scope with a super high BC bullet on your rifle, don't even bother going out because you're not going to kill anything. When we've been hunting successfully for a long time, what I want to talk about today is hunting before marketing hype. And because I don't take sponsors, because I refuse to take money from some cheap Chinese optic company to push a product, or some Turk Nasty clone by people that want to cut your head off but you want to send them money, or anything like that. And because I hope that you'll support the podcast, in lieu of ads, in lieu of my normal intro for this episode, I'm going to put in a little plug here for Patreon. I'm not great at marketing myself, I know that, but I hope you guys will consider becoming a patron. Announcement for the regular listeners of the podcast. I'm going to try something new. I'm going to take the ads off of the podcast in hopes that you guys will appreciate that and become patrons. You see, podcasts cost money to put out, especially after you get out so many episodes and take up so much space. Without getting into too much of how the sausage is made, they cost money for you to hear them. Now, you guys know that I don't take sponsors. I refuse sponsors if you've listened for any length of time, because you shall take no bribe. A bribe blinds the eyes of the words and twists the words of the righteous. But podcasts are put out by hosting companies, and they charge money to put the podcast out. In order to offset that, they'll put in ads, and those ads generate revenue, and that kind of helps for the podcast. But I don't know what those ads are. They're tailored to your algorithm and where you live, so they don't influence the content. But I'm going to try, I think for 40 days, I'm going to try taking out any ads and paying for the podcast out of my pocket, in hopes that this good free will gesture will encourage you guys to become patrons to support the podcast. If I get in this 40 days as much or more than I've made, well, I think that'll work out better for everybody. And if you don't know Patreon, if you're not a patron of anybody else, that's basically a website where I put a lot of content out there that you're just not going to get as a regular listener. There's a lot of special episodes, a lot of special content, videos, pictures. As an example, there are 4,384 posts that I've made on Patreon over the years, as a thank you to those that want to support the podcast. There used to be a $1 a month tier. Patreon got rid of that. I think now the lowest is $5 a month. If you cannot afford $5 a month, and I don't mean that facetiously, like if you're struggling to feed your family, then by all means, listen and don't feel guilty about it. I work as a private security contractor as my primary breadwinning job, so it's not like you're taking money out of my family's mouth. If you enjoy the podcast and want to support the podcast, not being a shill for some cheap Chinese optic company or telling you to buy whatever a bunch of other social media influencers are buying, and trying to keep it fair and unbiased. If you appreciate that, if you appreciate the podcast and the content, and you think it's worth $5 a month, please consider in this season of ad-free. That's me trying to say I value your time, and I'm going to try and get rid of the ads and hope that you'll become a patron because you value my time and the time that I put into the podcast. So consider becoming a patron. There should be a Patreon link in the show notes. Either way, enjoy the content. Here's the truth. We've been killing deer a long time. You can kill deer lots of ways. Although today, most of the government's deer are regulated by sport hunting, which means you have to use sporting methods, usually not condoned to use snares or traps or things like that, right? If we're talking about deer, most people think about hunting deer. But you don't even need a rifle to kill deer. But if you are going to use a rifle, right, a basic rifle with iron sights or an optic and any decent deer caliber, and by that I mean like 243 up to 45-70. Any of those will put meat in the freezer if you do your part. That's just true. That's just a stat. I don't know if it's absolutely true, but the stats that I've seen and heard, most deer are taken inside of 80 yards. The kill zone on a deer, you could debate an ethical kill zone 6 inches or 8 inches, but if you have a 2 MOA gun, which almost any gun over the counter now will shoot 2 MOA, even a lever action, you're talking 2 inches if it's a 2 MOA gun, that's 2 inches at 100 yards, that's 4 inches at 200 yards, that's 6 inches at 300 yards. Most deer, again, are taking 80-ish yards average. And especially talk about most places back east, probably can't even legally get a place to practice out that far at 300 yards. That's hard enough to do. So you don't need all this stuff. Like, if you want it, that's fine. If you want to play golf with a gun and go lob rounds out of steel at long range, it's fun, I get it. But you don't need that to hunt deer. And I would argue it's not ethical past, depending on the cartridge, right, between, 350, 450, 500 yards, because time of flight, and I'm not going to get into all that, I've hashed that out before, but the point is you don't need all that gear. The Gucci camo. I was recently reading some older hunting books that I bought on eBay because I just wanted to, and I enjoy that stuff. And I sent a bunch of pictures. I did a Patreon post, and I sent a bunch of pictures of these guys with all kinds of deer, mule deer, whitetail deer, and nice trophy deer, average deer, and a bunch of pictures, and guys without camo. Right? You don't need camo. The deer we hunt today are the same taxonomically as they were in the 50s, in the 1850s. They're the same deer. And there's way more of them today. I've heard more than once there are more whitetail deer today than when Columbus landed, than pre-contact. I believe that because we create great deer habitat. You can listen to all the climate change, Greta people that are like, oh, we're killing the planet. I'm not saying everything we do for the planet is great, but we are stewards of the planet, and we make some great deer habitat. Deer are edge species. As much as you might love old growth forest, and I love it, and I love hiking around in it, but there's not a lot of deer in it. Us cutting down trees and doing responsible logging and things like that, that creates way more deer habitat. There are more deer today than maybe there ever have been. And they're the same deer, so you don't need Gucci camo. There's nothing wrong with wearing camo, but if you get something on sale or at Goodwill and it's camo, or it's even a neutral color, or green and black flannel, plaid, it's fine. You don't need if you think that this Gucci camo, like I'm team the redneck culture of the South, I'm team mossy oak or I'm team Realtree. The deer can't tell the difference. If you're like, no, those are for the poors. I'm team Sitka or I'm team First Light. That's all good stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. And I don't begrudge anybody for having a decent amount of money and wanting nice stuff. But you don't need it. And one versus the other really isn't going to make a difference. Think about this, just as to keep us grounded. People push that you need this super long range for elk, for deer, with a giant scope. You have to dial and spin and have a bunch of computers and calculators. And the same zones, same animals, a few weeks before or after, people successfully hunt with bow and arrow. And I still love hunting with archery. I have a recurve bow. I love going out. In the same zone for the same animals. Slightly before or after those seasons, people are successfully taking those animals with a bow or with muzzle loaders. Why is it that in those whatever weeks of rifle season you think that somehow you need a 1,000-yard rifle when you could shoot them a week before with a recurve bow or a compound bow? Right? You might argue, oh, they're in the right. Yeah, okay, I get it, but they're the same animals in the same place to keep it grounded in reality. People that are like, oh, this is the best camo you got to have. Everybody knows you got to have this year's Gucci camo because the deer will laugh at you if you're in last year's camo. They'll buy all this Gucci camo, and then not where I live, thankfully, but in a lot of places, there's so many hunters, it's like a pumpkin patch. They require you to wear orange. So you're going to go out there and buy all this Gucci camo and throw a giant orange vest over it. A blaze orange vest. Deer are colorblind. Mostly. They can see some colors. Right? So the fact that you're running around with a blaze orange vest like a pumpkin and people still shoot deer that way tells you the camo, not really that important. I know the big camo conspiracy that you got to have this camo or this camo so much better. But again, a lot of places you're required to wear a blaze orange vest and a hat like a pumpkin walking around. Which tells you, as much as you might want to be marketed to and believe that it matters, it really doesn't. Mossy Oak, Realtree, Sitka, First Light, old school duck camo, the old woodland camo that I grew up hunting with, the old military surplus, my first uniform when I was issued, the old, woodland camo pattern that we still have when I joined the Marine Corps. It's been around a long time. Any of it. None of it. Khakis and a flannel shirt. Wool preferably, right? But a wool plaid. A lot of people think flannel, they think cotton. I would stay away from cotton unless it's a real dry climate and you know the weather. But there are, plaid wool shirts that are fantastic. I don't know how many, and I say deer because most hunters in the U.S., when they think about hunting, they think about deer. If you're hunting turkey or something, yeah, a red and black, flannel shirt's probably not the best. But do you know how many? I guarantee, well, I don't guarantee because I don't know, but I would venture to guess that if you added up the best camo patterns that have taken the most animals and you tallied those, they'd be less than people that have taken them wearing plaid shirts. Because people hunted with plaid shirts for giant chunks of our hunting history to keep it grounded in reality. Also, let's talk about why do we actually hunt? And I'm not one of these people that has anything against trophy hunters, guys. I've been a professional guide. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I got nothing against trophy hunting. If you're hunting and you keep the animal and put it on your wall and you want to remember that and be proud of that and think about that animal and that hunt that you took 10 years ago, 10 years from now, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing ethically wrong with that. But I have, unless my mom kept some, I always keep that as a caveat because my mom may have some in a garage or something. Because when I was a kid, redneck culture, you shot a deer with nice antlers and you kept them. I don't know why. It's just something we did. I never really thought about it. It's just the culture I grew up in. But since then, I've shot some really nice animals. I've guided for really nice animals. I've taken some really cool exotic animals. I have 0 antlers from any animals that I've taken. Last elk I shot, I didn't even bother taking the antlers out of the woods, which reminds me of one of these older books that I was reading just yesterday. They said back, he was talking about, I forget if he was talking about his father or his grandfather. They hunted elk and they mostly hunted cows, like they wanted cows. And if they shot a bull, one of the first things they did was cut the antlers off and leave them in the woods because they were hunting for meat. Right? If you're back then packing an elk out on a horse, take the antlers off, right? You don't want them getting hung up. You don't want them poking into the horse. You don't want them doing a bunch of other stuff. You could take them. People still do with horses and pack the antlers out. But back then the thought was, I want the meat. Like, I want the meat for winter. The antlers are just an obstacle. Why? Just leave them. Like, unless you're going to make like a bone-handled knife or something, what's the point? And I'm not saying you have to do that, and I'm not saying that way is better or not better than taking the antlers and putting them on your wall. Again, if you want to do that, I got nothing against it. Like, I enjoy the beauty of a nice, healthy deer, antlers or no antlers. Like, I get the beauty of it, and I'm not disparaging that, but the primary trophy for me is the meat. Some of the cleanest, best, food source on the planet. That's what I enjoy. And I enjoy mostly, if I'm being honest, using my skills out in the wilderness as a tracker, as a stalker. If you hunt on a stand or over a corn pile, I'm not begrudging that. I like to spot and stalk and still hunt. I like using those skills, honing those skills. And I like putting meat on the table, slaying a beast and putting it on the table for my wife and myself to eat. And I don't apologize for that, and I'm not going to. That's why I hunt. And marketing hype hasn't changed that. I hunt for the experience of being out in the bush, living out in the wilderness, being out in the wilderness, getting away from a world with rectangles and squares and 90-degree angles and phone screens and glass. Like I want to get away from that world and be in a forest, in a beautiful, peaceful stream, in a mountain meadow. That's the world that I want to be in. I do it for that. So all the extra gear that's going to get me away from that and get me back in front of a screen, get me back looking at electronic stuff, get me back with dials and spinners and mechanized stuff, like, it's not why I do it. And you don't have to do it to hunt successfully, so don't think that you do. Don't let the last round of marketing hype make you think that you need that to kill an elk. Because again, people kill elk in that same area, or deer in that same area, with bows, just before or just after that. So obviously you don't need that. I'm not saying this is always the case, but I think a lot of new hunters go down that road and they would be better off with less gear and simpler gear than a bunch of complex gear. They get, a giant scope, and I say giant like something greater than 10 power, and I saw this guiding. Like, they just miss opportunities at deer when they'd be better with simpler gear that they practice with and dry fire with and practice getting shots off quickly. Because a deer is not a steel target or a paper target. A deer is not going to stand there until you're ready. You got to take that shot when you have the shot. That's way more important than fidget spinners and dialing and plumb bobs and widgets and sprockets and all. None of that stuff really matters. You don't need any of that stuff to take a deer. And I think a lot of the time, not all the time, like if you know what you're about and you know what kind of hunting you like, some of the newer gear can be a benefit. But if you're just getting started, just take what you have and go for a walk in the woods and learn about the forest, learn about God's creation, learn about the deer. With whatever you have, don't think that you need this fancy stuff to put meat on the table for your family, because the fact of the matter is you don't. As much as I love ballistics and I like bullet technology and I like newer things like solid copper bullets and this and that, and I get it, I'm a ballistics nerd too, but the most important thing to me is having the tag. Like, I get, unless I win a lottery or something, I get one elk tag a year. If you told me you were going to give me an extra elk tag and I could take another elk to stack up more meat for my family, and you told me I had to use a 30-30, which I rag on lever actions, but if you told me I had to use a 30-30, I'd say, fine. If you told me I had to use a 30-30 with iron sights, I would say, fine. I would be happy to go out if I had the tag, because that's the opportunity for me to legally take another elk. Is a 30-30 the best elk round? No, but it's still plenty of elk, and it still will. And if you gave me the chance, I would happily go out and do an extra elk hunt with a 30-30 with iron sights. You told me, well, I took my elk not this past year, but the year before, with a shotgun, with a smooth bore shotgun. You know what? And it died, and I hate it. So, again, the marketing hype. Not saying you shouldn't have nice stuff, or if you want a better caliber, a hotter caliber, or a nice optic, that you shouldn't get it. You should, and you shouldn't feel guilty about it if you earned it righteously with the right attitude and it's your money and you didn't cheat anybody out of it. Enjoy that. Enjoy those gifts from God. Enjoy that, enjoy that resource. But if you don't have it, don't think that you need it to hunt. Don't think that you need it to be successful. Again, I love calibers. I love rifles. Obviously, I like guns. I do Gunfighter Life podcast but a part of that is that a lot of people say a lot of stuff that don't have a lot of experience. And I'm telling you from my experience, two scenarios. If you said, and I hunted last year by God's grace and took an elk, but in the most heavily hunted unit in the state on public land. I don't know how many days or miles I hiked and, things that happened trying to get that elk, but by God's grace, I got that elk, and I'm thankful for it. But if you told me I had to hunt that same public land unit over-the-counter tag with whatever rifle I wanted, even you would give me a new rifle with a new a new caliber for the hunt, and I just gave it back when I was done. But any caliber I wanted, any scope that I wanted, or you said, there's this rancher with a bunch of nice elk on his property. They never get hunted, but you have to hunt that hunt with his grandfather's old 30-40 Craig. You get to practice with it. You get to, make sure it's zeroed and go out and practice with it and train with it. But you have to take that 30-40 Craig, but you can hunt elk on his property, a bunch of elk. Nobody else is going to hunt them. I'm going to take the 30-40 Craig because, the rifle is important that you need a gun, but the opportunity in being in a target-rich environment, that's more important, right? So let's not lose perspective on what's really important. And I like guns and ammo, and I like the gun companies, and I like the ammo companies, and I like the innovation. But I think we can get carried away. I'm not on social media. Like, I don't have the TikTok and the Instagram and the YouTube or any of that stuff. I'm not on there looking at stuff, but I think that, I could be wrong, but I think that people get so wrapped up in that. They think that the stuff being pushed is necessary or way more beneficial than it is for actually being successful in the field. And take what you have. If you've got a single-shot 12-gauge shotgun, I grew up hunting deer with a single-shot 20-gauge shotgun. Take what you have. You could have the best gear, but if you're not out in the woods hunting, you're not going to take anything. I don't care how nice your gear is. So take what you have. Take what, warm, sensible clothing that you have. Don't do anything dangerous or stupid like go out in a rainstorm with cotton, but go out with what you have. Don't think that you need all the fancy gear to take deer, because there's the same deer that were taken in the 1950s or the 1850s. Taxonomically the same deer, and there's more of them now. I think I've made the point several different ways. I hope this was beneficial to you, and I hope it was encouraging to you. If you want to, for whatever reason you want to hunt, to get away from the screens, to get away from the 90-degree angles and the traffic and internal combustion engines and alarms, and just be out in nature, if it's to put meat on the table for your family. I hope this was helpful. If you've been thinking that you need the new, if you want to get a new rifle, get it and enjoy it. I just got a new rifle. But again, don't let any of that be an unnecessary roadblock to successful hunting. Because people were hunting long before social media, long before there were laser rangefinders, long before there were firearms. That is secondary to the skill and the opportunity in being out there. So don't let it stop you from being out there. With that, a quick, not really tactical tip, but I'm going to call it like a tactical tip-ish. For new hunters, I think they can be a bit trepidatious about gutting their first animal, skinning their first animal. Guys, it's not rocket science. And again, people have been doing it a long time. Even if you don't have a, grandfather, father, uncle to show you how to do it, friend, you probably know basic anatomy of an animal, right? You probably know the basics. Look at a quick diagram, watch a quick video or something on it if you need to, but you don't even need to do that. But if it helps, but once you get up to your animal, cut its throat, let the blood pour out. Get the guts out, because that's what makes it spoil faster. A lot of places back east, you're not more than, I was going to say 10 miles. You're probably not more than a mile from a road. Mostly back east, you drag the animal out whole, get the guts out, get it home, get the hide off if that's how you want to cure it, and start cutting it apart in pieces. Stop worrying about unless you let it sit so long it rots, you're not going to ruin it. Just start taking it apart. It's like anything else. The more you do it, you're going to get better at it. Don't let it stop you. The fact that you don't have a great technique. There's so many different ways to clean an animal, skin an animal. People do it different ways. Growing up, we did it one way. Out here west, you generally have to do it another way. If you're deep in the, wilderness backpack hunting, you're going to have to probably, take it out in pieces. Especially if you're talking an elk. You're not dragging it out whole, or you're not dragging an elk out whole. The point is, don't let it stop you. Get the guts out. After that, if you can drag it out whole, or if not, get the hide off. Keep the bugs off of it. Start taking it apart. It's going to be fine. Once you get the guts out, even in fairly warm temperatures, right? Meat lasts a long time. I've never hunted Africa, but I've hunted Arizona. People hunt Africa. It's hot, right? And they're a long way from a fridge, and people eat that meat, and they've been doing it for thousands of years. Don't freak out about it. It's going to be okay. So don't let that stop you either. Okay, with that, your tactical verse of the day. An often quoted verse, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. If we back up a little bit and read that in context. You shall not take vengeance, nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. The New Testament, I don't have this one memorized, but it's something, a root of bitterness by which many become defiled. My comments on that. You shall not take vengeance nor bear any grudge against the children of your people. Having a grudge, you think it's this person, and it generally hurts you more than it hurts the other person, right? If you're bitter, you have that root of bitterness, that can really hurt you and your walk and your journey. The other person may not even know that you're bearing a grudge against them. It's bad for you. God says the law was given for our good. He says that for our good. You shall not take vengeance nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.